It's why Elon Musk drives a Tesla. It's why the CEO of McDonald's eats 2 McDonald's meals per day. We're not honest as a customer. So if you're a business owner, the best thing you can do is get out from behind your big fancy mahogany desk and go and experience what your customer is experiencing. Go and feel the pain that your customer is feeling. Actually go there and be the customer.
Ryan, what on earth does it mean to be the customer? And why has this idea totally exposed the blind spots in your business and changed everything?
I think what most business owners don't realize is that customer surveys are the absolute worst way to get feedback from your customer. They just don't work. So if you've ever been to a restaurant and maybe the food was delayed or the food was cold or it just wasn't that good, but when the waiter comes down at the end to ask you how was everything, 9 times out of 10 we say, yeah, everything was brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're like, it's the best thing ever. Thank you.
I know we're really not honest. We're not honest as a customer. So the best way to find out what the customer is actually thinking is to be the customer.
It's kind of like that TV show Undercover Boss, where like they actually like go and use the actual products or use the services that their business actually does.
Yeah, exactly. It's why Elon Musk drives a Tesla. It's why the CEO of McDonald's eats 2 McDonald's meals per day. So if you're a business owner, the best thing you can do is get out from behind your big fancy mahogany desk and go and experience what your customer is experiencing. Go and feel the pain that your customer is feeling. Actually go there and be the customer.
So as always, we're going to unpack this idea with 3 levels. The first level is to become your external customer. Can you give us a few more examples of how you've done that in your own company?
Yeah, so if you can imagine yourself sitting on a 12-hour plane journey, how do you feel after getting off a plane for 10, 12 hours?
Like stiff, sore, like couldn't wait to get out.
Yeah, and then imagine somebody saying, oh, you have to get right back on that plane again and do the exact same. That's what some people with a disability are going through every single day. They're getting on that long haul flight and then being told as soon as they get off it, to get right back on it. They're doing that constantly every single day. So that's the mission of our company, to help provide seating for those types of clients. People who are doing that long haul flight every day and been told to get right back on the plane and do it tomorrow again. But one of the things we've done is that Darren, who is our head product designer, Darren has actually taken one of our products home and he's sitting in the chair in his living room while he's watching TV in the evenings because he wants to be the customer. Feel what the customer is feeling, experience what the customer is experiencing. And by doing that, he's found loads and loads of product improvements, tweaks to the product, different design changes that he's suggesting because he's actually sitting in it. And he's being the customer. It makes so much sense when we say it here now in the podcast, but it's such a powerful concept.
Yeah, and the reason why I love that example so much is because like you guys could sit in a market research meeting like for literally 8 hours straight and be like, oh, well, what about this? What about this? What about that? And you'd be kind of like, you would be blind. Like you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And it's only when Darren sits in the chair and experiences it for himself, he's like, oh, that wee lever's not right, or this or that or this. And I love, like, it's like extreme empathy. Yeah. And like all the books you read, it's like you got to have empathy with your customers and everything like that. But like you guys take this to the next level. Like tell us like what you do with the phones, like calling into the business.
Yep, absolutely. There's certain times where we take time aside where somebody will go to the conference room for an hour or even go home for the day. We've seen people, volunteer to go home and say, I'm going to, be the customer for the rest of the day. And they'll go home and be the customer. They'll sit at home. They will phone back into the office that they've just left and make phone calls to test the process. So they might, request a quotation. They might phone up and ask for certain specific details on a chair, but all they're doing is testing the process. So we literally take aside time. We allocate time for this on a daily and weekly basis. Because this doesn't happen by accident. We don't naturally do this. You have to set aside the time. So somebody will take an hour away and say, I'm going to spend the next hour going through the website. I'm going to pretend that I'm the customer. I'm going to be the customer. I'm going to test all the functions, make sure they all work, make sure all the links work. I'm going to put myself in the customer's shoes and be the customer. And see, if you do this, the amount of improvements that will come will be unbelievable.
That's class.
Yeah.
And another really good example of that is like, is it Shamey on your team?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us what Shamey did, because that's unbelievable.
This was just last week. So Shamey is our dispatch manager. And what Shamey actually done was he posted a package to himself to his home address. And the reason he done that was to be the customer. So he is actually being his own customer. When he's receiving that box at home, he's like, right, how do I open this? Where is the label positioned? Is there too much tape in the box? Do I need a knife, a pair of scissors, a tool to, he's finding all the struggles that the customer would normally be finding. So the goal is to find the improvements, find the struggles, find the pain of the customer. Instead of expecting the actual customer to go through the pain, we go through the pain. Wow. So Shamey was his own customer. And in the process of doing that, he found 5 or 6 improvements.
And isn't it crazy that like we just push all that onto the customer?
Yeah.
Like subconsciously or like unintentionally, our actions are like, no, customer, you deal with it. Like you deal for our inefficiencies, you deal for our lack of thinking things through. But if you do it this way, that's a life hack. Actually, your brother Martin said something to me one time where he said, it's impossible to plow a field by turning it over in your mind. And it's kind of like that. It's like you can sit there and you can think about the chair, think about the chair, think about the packaging, but it's only if you actually have your hands physically on it, taking the tape off, that you're going to see, oh, we've used way too much tape. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. Be the customer. Actually be the customer.
All right. So level 2 of this concept of being the customer is to become an internal customer.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So if CEOs or business owners actually went and done the work that they're expecting their employees to do, they wouldn't last for an hour. Why do we expect our team members to go through these sloppy processes? When I would go on business trips and come back, I would bring back all these subsistence receipts, taxi receipts, all these travel receipts, and kind of throw them into the accounts office. And it wasn't until I realized that, okay, I'm going to go into the accounts office and work there for a few years. And when I was doing that process, I actually realized how disrespectful it was. People just dump all the receipts into the accounts office, expecting the accounts department to sort it all out. It just wasn't a respectful process. So after internalizing the concept of be the customer, I spent a couple of hours in the accounts office organizing everybody's receipts. And I was like, this is crazy. It's okay saying it, but when you're actually doing it, when you're being the customer of your own product and you're in that seat, we were like, we need a better way. And we actually got an app. We've got an app on everybody's phone now in the company that as soon as you buy something, you buy a cup of coffee, you bring out your phone, you scan the receipt. It's an app called Dext. It's really good. And you scan the receipt and it uploads it automatically onto our account system. So no more wasteful process has been sent back into the accounts office. No more disrespecting the skills and the knowledge and, the work of the accounts people. But this didn't occur to me until I was being the customer.
Right.
I had to actually be the customer to find these improvements.
And so that was a pretty big step as a leader. Like it required a lot of humility. How has that trickled down through the rest of your organization?
Yep. So we do this a lot. A couple of times a week, you'll see somebody working in the wood area. Paddy, for example, in the wood area, he'll go and work in the upholstery area, even for a couple of hours, so he can be the customer. It's okay saying, yeah, they're my customer. I'll send everything in the best way that I can in perfect quality. But when you're actually in the customer's seat, standing in the customer's shoes, looking through the customer's eyes, it's a totally different perspective. So the fact that Paddy worked at the next process down and was the customer of his own product, he was seeing sharp edges that should have been sanded. He changed the way that the wood was presented to the next station. He made a trolley to transport it down to make it easier. He done all these things because he felt what his customer was feeling.
You're right. So internally, you guys have started treating the team members with the same level of respect as you want to treat your customers. Absolutely.
And that's the way it should be. There should be no difference between woodworking and upholstery than finished chair to actual customer. It's the exact same thing. And once we get this, and we're starting to, it's a journey for us as well, I'm being really honest, but once we get to the point where every single person respects their internal customer as much as we respect the external customer, then that creates so much respect through the organization.
Yeah, and that's crazy because like what did Alan at Toyota say? He talked about his big thing was it was a built-in quality.
Built-in quality, yeah. Quality should be built into the process.
Wow.
And the next proceeding process, you should act like they're the actual customer who's buying the chair. And if we all thought like this, that's when quality really, goes through the roof.
It is like putting yourself in the other person's shoes on steroids because, I mean, like we said, it's like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so by actually being on the receiving end of the work that you do shows you in some cases how sloppy that work actually is and how much burden you're passing on to the next person down the chain.
Yeah, there is no other way because we can get feedback, we can get reviews, we can get feedback from customers or from the next process, but it's not as good. It's watered down. It's not until you actually do it that you really feel the pain and then find the improvements.
So practically speaking, like you as an owner of a company and as a director, like you will kind of parachute in undercover boss style to like certain departments to learn things. On like a team level, how do you guys like systematize or like, because you mentioned some person will work in the process before them and the process after. So how do you guys like practically in the real world, not just a cool thing on a podcast, make that happen?
Yep. Brilliant question, because we're actually doing a project called the Be the Customer project at the minute. So every quarter at our company, we set rocks or goals, big goals. And one of the rocks for this quarter is that we've set up a rota to get 10 to 12 people out of the office, out of the design team, and go and spend time with the salespeople that are on the ground.
Wow.
So our entire design team, our operations team, our purchasing team, they're going on site for a full day, maybe 2 days, to spend time with the customer, with the salesperson, to see all the pain points that they have. Because getting all the feedback on a Google form or an Excel sheet or an email, it's not the same.
Right.
You actually have to be there and be the customer to experience and to find improvements.
It's interesting because like I've heard you talk before about this kind of like Japanese Toyota way of doing business called lean manufacturing, and this idea of like going to the Gemba. Like how is that connected to this point?
It's very, very similar. Going to the Gemba is where the actual work happens. So we talk about the factory floor being the Gemba, where the chair is actually manufactured, where we're actually doing the welding, where we're applying the paint. That is the Gemba, where the value is being added.
Yeah, and that style of leadership was totally new to me because I think you kind of joked about it earlier. Like the style of leadership I knew was mahogany desk, as far away from the actual work as possible.
Yeah.
And then like I met all you lean guys and it's like, no, it's totally different.
Yeah, it reminds me of a really good quote actually. And the quote says, the further away from the Gemba that decisions are made, the worse the decision will be. That's a guy in America, Chuck Ciccarelli, that came up with that quote. It wasn't me. But it makes so much sense. The further away we are from the customer, the worse the decisions will be. We actually have to be the customer, be in the customer's shoes and see what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Like for the business owner listening to this, they're like, if at this stage, they're probably like, this is insane. But it might be too insane for them where they're like, oh, I could, you get to the point where it's like, oh, it's too much. I could never do that.
Yeah.
So like, if you think back to whenever you first started learning about lean and all this sort of stuff, how did you start to implement this and like what went wrong and what went well and,
Yep.
break the facade for us a wee bit?
Yep. So before kind of internalizing this concept of be the customer, we tended to work more in silos. A really good example is the design team. We've got our own in-house product design team, and they were almost disconnected from production or from manufacturing. Designing something it's one thing looking at it on a computer screen, but it's another thing when you go to the factory floor and the bolts don't fit in the hole because it hasn't been designed with manufacturing or people in mind. So after this, learning about this concept or coming up with this concept of be the customer, something that the design team now do automatically is that they create a design and work with the people on the shop floor with the designs. But then a step further than that again is that they actually build the chair. They build the prototypes. They build the design.
Wow.
So the product designer will get on the factory floor, get their hands dirty, and they'll actually build the product.
So good.
Because the factory is their customer. the people in production are the customer of the design team. So for them to be the customer, they actually have to build a chair.
So good.
And then they're like, oh, this hole doesn't fit, or we need another tool for this, or why did we make it so awkward to assemble this particular part? And because they actually have to do it, they're right back up to the design office to make the change.
Man, I wish IKEA did that, where the people who designed the IKEA instruction leaflets actually did that, because like so many things would be solved instead of me, the customer, having to like pick up the burden, as you said. So the 2 levels we covered so far. Level number 1 was become your external customer.
Yeah.
Level number 2, be the internal customer. And like this third and final level, like, is there any way that we can like be the customer in our personal lives? Like, how can we like to get a little bit philosophical at the end of these kind of these episodes. So in our own lives, like, how could we be the customer for the people around us?
Well, if you think about weddings, most weddings are a sloppy process, I think, in my opinion. The food's cold, the chairs aren't comfortable, the cake's too dry. Not all, not saying them all, but a lot of weddings. So when myself and my wife got married, we made a point of going to the hotel venue. We tasted the food, we sampled the cake, we sat on the chairs. And you might think this is an extreme level of detail, but these are the type of things that we done in preparation for the wedding.
Right, because you actually wanted to put yourself in the seats and the shoes of your guests.
Exactly. We wanted to be the customer. Sit in the seat of the customer, the actual seat.
Yeah.
And see the wedding from the customer's experience. And, looking back, I didn't obviously know that that's what I was doing. We didn't have the phrase be the customer back then because I got married 10 years ago. But looking back, that's exactly what we were doing. We were being the customer so that we could sort out any potential flaws and make any improvement suggestions before the big day came. But the more you think of it, it applies to everything. When I'm communicating with friends and family, I'm almost saying, how could I put myself in their shoes? How do I communicate with people? How do I interact with people? If I was them, what would I be thinking? And try and put yourself in the shoes of your friends and family. Try and put yourself in the shoes of those people who you interact with and you communicate with, to see if you can be better at it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Be a better communicator, be more understanding, be more empathetic. Maybe when you come up with this big, wild, crazy idea and you're trying to communicate it to somebody, but they're coming from a totally different perspective. They've had a stressful day at work. The last thing they want to hear is my big, crazy idea. So it's putting yourself in their shoes and thinking, okay, it's not about me, it's about the customer. And the customer can be your friend, your family, your people you work with in business, or ultimately the customer.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll come back from like a big trip away and I'll be like super excited. I'll be like, oh, Jackie, who's my wife? I'm like, Jackie, this. And Jackie just looks at me and she hands me like our 9-month daughter and it's like, can you change the nappy? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we can become so disconnected from that. And it's like, well, what actually does that personal customer, my wife, the person that I have promised and made pledges and vows to love and to serve for the rest of my life, like, what does she need in that moment? Like, what are her needs? And like, how can I try to be empathetic to that instead of just like being selfish, like, to be brutally honest?
That's actually a really good point. It's getting me thinking just right now as we're doing this. What is Jackie thinking? Jackie's been at home for 3 or 4 days. You're away on this big fancy business trip. She's looking after the kids. She's, doing all the housework. Maybe a bit frustrated that you've been away enjoying yourself.
100%.
And then we bust through the door with our story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just like you were talking about earlier, like dumping all the receipts on the carry into the accounts. I just come home, I just dump it all the excitement, all the pain, all the challenges, all the stress, all everything. I dump it on the Jackie, and I just like selfishly expect that she'll deal with it. And I'm not thinking about what she needs or what the customer of Jackie, like how I could actually serve her in that moment. So I think this, like, I love hanging out with you because I'm a big believer that like business is I think is the ultimate way to develop yourself as a person. Because I think these principles, they almost have like a universal power to them. Every episode we do, I feel like if you apply them, like, changes your whole life, not just your business life.
That's right. And that's why it's so powerful. The work that we're doing in this podcast, by simplifying messages, that's really what we're doing. We're translating messages to be really simple, because anybody listening to this podcast can get those 3 words, be the customer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple thing to apply. It's a simple thing to get. And I think that's why these concepts are so powerful.
And this is super meta, but I'll say it anyway. Like, if you think about, like, we tried to do an extra amount of prep for this episode, probably like 3 times more than we usually do. And why do we do that? Because we're trying to be the customer.
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure that, like, we're communicating ideas and sharing stories that we think are going to help people internalize concepts as easy as possible. And we're getting better at it every single episode. Like, you want to talk about, like, lean or continuous improvement, like every single episode is slightly better than before. And at the core, when you dissect it, it's actually like we're thinking about the people that will listen to it because we genuinely care. And I think that's maybe something that we haven't actually mentioned throughout the whole process is you kind of have to care. Like, why is Darren sitting in a seat designed for people with a disability while he's watching TV?
I think you've hit on something massive. That's probably a podcast some other time, is the importance of purpose when doing something big like creating an organizational change or when implementing lean, the importance of purpose, because we're all, at our company at Seat Matters, we're all doing purposeful work. We all know why we're there. We know who the customer is. We know why the work we're doing is so important. But I think that's massive.
And I think that's the difference between, you know, a lean leader like you and like a kind of picture like a stereotypical Hollywood movie villain CEO type character who dumps the receipts on Carrie's desk and then just doesn't care, doesn't give a crap, and literally just moves on. And even if Carrie's like, oh, this is really annoying, he goes, I don't care, that's what you're being paid to do, so you better shut up and do it.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, you have to care. And I think most people that listen to the show and that we're connected with, they are purpose-driven business owners who have servant hearts and they want to make a positive impact in the world. And so our mission is to serve these people as much as we can. So kind of on that point, I think this is probably a nice way to end. Like, what is the action step? So, like, what homework, what next steps can we all take after listening to this podcast? Again, I love this. I'm fully bought in. I love the idea of being the customer. It resonates with me deeply. I don't know where to start. Like, what are the first steps that you would recommend any business owner listening take to really start to implement this?
Yep. I have got one idea. This may sound drastic, but I think if somebody wants to take this concept serious, I think they should really do it. I think the next time you're in your office at your business, at your company, this is just one example, ask one person to volunteer to get up from their desk, fold up their laptop, take it home, and go home and work from home for the day as an experiment to be the customer of your own business. So send somebody home to phone back into the office that they've just left and pretend that they're ordering a product, pretend that they're looking for a quotation, pretend that they are asking for some type of specific information to test the process and see how good it is.
Even one step further, give them a budget and just buy the thing. And then they can do exactly what Shamey and Darren have done, where it literally, so they phone, they experience the sales team, they go on the website, they experience the website, it comes to their door, they see what the packaging is like.
100%. That's a step further again.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And like, that doesn't cost that much. Like, that's a next to nothing investment after shipping, really. Do you know what I mean? And cost of goods.
It is. And the improvements that you will find in your organization. And then if that's successful, which it will be, I guarantee it will be a success. If that's a success, set up a program within your organization where every week somebody does it, or every month somebody goes and bees the customer. Just set up a rota or some type of system to instill this thinking in your culture.
Yeah.
Because it's okay, me and you doing it, and somebody leaving the office to be the customer at home and phone back into your business. But imagine doing that all the time.
Right.
Imagine every week where there's an experiment like that happening.
So powerful.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You almost wonder why everybody isn't doing this already.
Yeah. Well, and you made such a good point at the start, where this is why the CEO of McDonald's, you know, eats there every single day, because they're literally being the customer. They get the full experience. They stand in line. They use the automated machines. They use the kiosk. Yeah. They see how quickly it's prepared. They see if the Big Mac has the same amount of pickles. Blah 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 blah. Like, they are the customer, and like that's their gamba. It's so funny. You are right. It's like whenever you say it out loud, you're like, oh, this has been around us the whole time, and we just didn't see it.
Yeah.
yeah, look, we're sold. We get it. We get it. I think everyone gets it by now. Genuinely, Ryan, thank you so much for this. And thank you so much for listening. We voice cracked there. We'll keep going anyway. Thank you so much for listening and watching this episode. And we do this for you. We love making it. You are our customers. We do it because we want to see you and your business go to the next level. And so any feedback you can give us and all to make it better, please drop it below. And other than that, yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.